The San Francisco 49ers with a Thursday night win over the Seattle Seahawks to begin Week 6 of the National Football League. San Francisco has now won 6 straight against Seattle. It's the longest win streak against Seattle in 49er history. At the field in Seattle, our NFL reporter Farhan Lalji joining us now. Farhan, Luke Wilson just basically went on a campaign to make Brock Purdy the MVP. Basically said he's a top 5 QB in the league, needs to get more respect. 255 yards, 3 touchdowns. What stood out to you about Purdy's performance in this one?
Honestly, as good as Purdy was statistically and as efficient as he was, 3 touchdowns, no picks, and you mentioned the yardage. What impressed me the most about Purdy in the first half of this game was his ability to run the football, not take off downfield necessarily, but to extend plays and to avoid sacks. There was a 3rd and 3 moment where he winds up taking off, just getting enough for the first down, breaking a tackle from a linebacker, extended plays and avoided big sacks, kept this team on schedule. You know, you look at him here running around, keeping his eyes downfield, completing a pass, getting it down to the 10-yard line. Does it again here. This could have been a disastrous loss, but he extends it long enough to just avoid disaster and keeping them in field goal range. So I think that's kind of an underrated part of Purdy's game, because you look at him, you don't necessarily think he's all that dynamic athletically with his legs, but it surprises you just how much he can do when it's needed. And I think he did a lot of that in the first half, just to allow this team to possess the ball. You know, they had 2 long drives that added up to 167 yards and 15 minutes of clock time in the first half. And a lot of those drives were kept alive because of what Purdy did with his legs.
And then, you know, you have Nick Bosa, 49ers star, who basically called this a must-win, Farhan, coming off such a disappointing loss last week. What kind of an impact did Bosa have in this win for San Francisco?
Well, he wasn't very good at all. He didn't manage a single sack. Okay, I'm lying. He was really good, Jay. 14 pressures in this game, according to Next Gen Stats. That is the most, tied for the most by a single player in any game in the last 14 years. And the only other player who's done that was also Nick Bosa. So early on in the game, he pressures Smith, and that leads to the first interception on the first drive of this game. And then whenever he went up against Stone Forsythe, he absolutely abused him. 11 of those 14 pressures came against Forsythe. So early on in the game, they were trying to chip and bump and do some things to try to give him some help, and then they got away from it, and then he was able to get home a little bit more and disrupt things. So Geno Smith, you know, another game of 52 pass attempts. That's the second time in the last 3 games he has thrown that many times. That is not what you want from Geno Smith. And you know, I heard Luke earlier talking about how much they were running the ball, and they need to maybe have Geno Smith throw it more, because that's why they brought in Ryan Grubb. And there's some truth to that, but I also think they're trying to protect the line from pass rush situations when you get an elite pass rusher like that. So they ran the ball 19 times. They only managed 52 yards on those rushes. So it's not like that line was doing a great job of run blocking as well, but Nick Bosa had an impact in this game. His hands were all over it, and Geno Smith felt it.
You know, the Seattle Seahawks brought in Mike McDonald, former D coordinator for the Baltimore Ravens. He's a defensive coach. This Seahawks team got torched for over 408 total yards in this football game. Why is this defense so bad right now?
Well, really, there's 2 things. First of all, personnel-wise, even when they're completely healthy, they are marginal and they're thin in certain areas, but they're not healthy right now. So you look at this game, you know, they played it without Uchenna Nwosu, who missed the first 4 games, played 20 snaps the last game, then came out this for another 4 weeks. You saw them. They lost Tariq Woolen. They don't have that presence in the middle in Byron Murphy. And then after losing Woolen, they also lost 2 additional corners in the game. So, you know, at the end of the day, when Purdy needed to make a play, he was able to make it. He didn't necessarily blow the box score up statistically individually, but when the key plays needed to be made, that defense couldn't make them. They missed tackles, and then you wind up with that final play. They get this to within 1 score. You've got a number 3 running back in the game. You've got 3 timeouts left, and you allow a 76-yard run on the first play after you score the touchdown. That is simply not good enough. So they need to get some guys back healthy, and at that point, I think you'll be able to see a little bit more of what Mike McDonald does schematically, because right now it's been pretty vanilla because I don't think his personnel can handle it. He's finding out this is not the Baltimore defensive personnel.
Yep, no question about that. This is our NFL reporter, Farhan Lalji from Lumen Field in Seattle. Farhan, thanks for this. You're the best. Hey, don't forget on Sunday, FanDuel has the Bengals as 3.5-point favorites against the Giants on Sunday Night Football, and you can see that one right here on TSN. Cincy, 8-4 against the spread in their last 12 as a road favorite. Can they turn their season around? Pre-game coverage begins at 7 p.m. Eastern right here on TSN, and after the game is over, of course, you must stay tuned for our show. SportsCenter with Jay Onrait, brought to you by Harvey's, will be on right after the Sunday Nighter, and Luke Wilson will join me to break down the game.